People dead following a shooting this afternoon in Escambia County, Florida.
Well, Lenise Byron, the sheriff's office tells us that this was a domestic situation. A man shot a woman before turning the gun on himself and shooting and killing himself. This is video from when we first arrived on the scene. This all happening this afternoon at the Stoddard Place Apartments on Tiger Lily Drive. Witnesses were inside of the home when it happened, and the sheriff says an infant was also inside.
An adult male was engaged in an argument with an adult female. He reportedly took a gun and he fired at the adult female before turning the gun on himself.
May 16, 2022, 3:47 p.m. A 20-year-old lady named Jacavia Simmons types 3 words into her phone: "I am single." 4 hours later, she's dead. How many times have you changed your relationship status online? Posted something when you were angry or hurt? We all have, right? But what if that simple post was actually a death warrant signed by your own hand? Picture this. You're scrolling through Facebook feed on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Pensacola, Florida. The sun is shining, people are going about their normal lives, and then you see it. A relationship status update with 3 simple words that seem innocent enough. But what really happens when you declare independence from someone who believes they own you? At exactly 7:30 p.m. that same day, neighbors at the Stoddard Place Apartments heard what they thought were fireworks, but they were wrong. Inside apartment 2B, 20-year-old Jacavia Rochelle Simmons lay dying from multiple gunshot wounds. Beside her was the father of her 4-month-old daughter who had turned the gun on himself. 3 words. Just 3 words. But sometimes 3 words are enough to get you killed. The police report would later classify this as a textbook murder-suicide. Case closed within hours. But here's what the police report doesn't tell you. Jacavia wasn't the first person a man named Tredarius Gray had hurt. Before you scroll past this story, ask yourself something. If someone in your life posted "I am single" right now, how would the people around them react? Hit that like button if you think every woman deserves to leave safely, because Jacavia thought she did too. But here's what haunts me. Is it possible that Jacavia knew exactly what would happen when she posted those words? And if she did, what does that tell us about the hell she was already living in? Now settle in with a cup of coffee as we walk through these cases together.
Welcome to Unseen True Crime Stories, where the darkest secrets and untold cases come to light. Consider subscribing and tapping the notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next true crime story.
To be honest, Keyshawn.
Keyshawn? Oh my God.
Everyone wants to know about the monster who killed her. But first, let me tell you about the girl who deserved to live. Jacavia Rochelle Simmons, popularly known as Kavia to those who loved her, was born on February 12, 2002, right here in Pensacola. She was the kind of person who made ordinary moments special. Her friend Jeriana still remembers her for one simple thing. She always played Uno with me because no one else would. Think about that for a moment. In a world where people are too busy, too distracted, too self-absorbed to play a card game with a friend, Jacavia would sit down and play Uno. That tells you everything about who she was. At just 20 years old, Jacavia had already embraced the role that defined her most, being a mother. Her 4-month-old baby girl was her world. Friends described watching her with that baby, seeing how naturally she took to motherhood, how devoted she was to giving her daughter everything she never had. Crystal Kitt, who had known Jacavia since childhood, remembered babysitting her years earlier. She was a really sweet girl. Even as a child, Jacavia had that quality that made people want to protect her, care for her, and even be around her. But here's what breaks my heart. While Jacavia was building her future, someone else was building a case for why she didn't deserve one. The tributes that poured in after her death came from everywhere. In Atlanta, Mississippi, with people who had never met her but felt connected to her story. One person wrote, "God bless her soul, may she rest in peace." Another simply said, "This is so sad and heartbreaking. She was just 20 years old. How much life can you pack into 20 years? How much life can be stolen in 20 seconds? When I read these tributes, when I see her friends still posting memories of her years later, I realized that Jakavia wasn't just another statistic. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's mother. She had favorite songs, inside jokes, dreams for her baby's future. Take a moment and think about the last text you sent to someone you love. Now imagine that was their final memory of you. Drop a comment with one word that describes how that makes you feel. Because Jakavia's last communication was a cry for freedom. If your daughter was 20 with a baby, and she felt trapped enough to publicly declare herself single, would you rather want her to stay silent? To stay alive? What kind of world are we creating for our daughters? Share your thoughts with me below in the comments. Now let me introduce you to the man who thought he owned her. It was a young man named Tredarius Gray, also known as Kimonti. He wasn't a stranger who just broke into Jakavia's apartment. He wasn't some random predator who snatched her off the street. He was the father of her child. He was her boyfriend and someone she trusted enough to build a life with. And that's what makes this so much worse. You see, monsters don't always look like monsters. They don't always announce themselves with warning signs and red flags. Sometimes they look like the person sleeping next to you. Sometimes they look like the father of your child. But if you knew where to look, the signs were there. In 2021, just 1 year before he would kill Jakavia, Tredarius Gray was arrested for aggravated battery. Let that sink in for a moment. Aggravated battery. That's not a bar fight that got out of hand. That's not a misunderstanding. That's someone who used their hands, their strength, their rage to seriously hurt another human being. One arrest. Just one arrest on his record. But one arrest is like one cockroach. Where there's one, there are always more hiding in the shadows. Here's what we know about how abusers operate. They don't start with murder. They start with small violations. A push here, a shove there. Maybe they control who you can talk to. Maybe they check your phone. Maybe they isolate you from your family and friends until you're completely dependent on them. Then, when you finally find the courage to say enough, when you finally declare your independence, that's when they escalate. Jakavia and Tredarius had been together for over a year. They were living together, raising their daughter together, presenting themselves to the world as a normal couple. Her uncle would later tell reporters that he couldn't understand how this happened because it looked like a normal relationship. But behind closed doors, Tredarius was building his case. Every time Jakavia talked to a friend, he was taking notes. Every time she posted on social media, he was watching. Every time she showed any sign of independence, he was calculating how to shut it down. The psychology of domestic abusers is terrifyingly simple. They believe they own their victims, not love them, own them, like property. And when property tries to walk away, they fight to get it back. On May 16th, those shadows were about to swallow Jakavia without a trace. Here's something that'll keep you up tonight. Statistically, you know someone right now who's being abused. Someone in your contacts, your workplace, your family. Subscribe if you believe they deserve better, because your silence might be their death sentence. Now here's something I need to ask you. If you knew your neighbor had been arrested for battery and you saw his girlfriend with bruises, would you call the police? Or would you mind your own business until it was too late? How many Jakavias have we all walked past? Tell me what you would do in the comments below.
Investigators have since left this crime scene. Now, we did speak to a family member of the female victim. He said the two were a couple and lived in this apartment complex right behind me. Take a look. Over 100 people gathered at the Stoddard Place Apartments Monday night. Many were in tears. Some said they were family members of the deceased, many not wanting to talk. Monday afternoon, the Escambia County Sheriff's Office said a man shot and killed a woman and then turned the gun on himself.
An adult male was engaged in an argument with an adult female. He reportedly took a gun and he fired at the adult female before turning the gun on himself.
Sheriff Chip Simmons said there were witnesses to the shooting.
We understand that there were a couple of witnesses. One was an infant child.
The names of the victims are not being released.
Yeah. Very shocking.
An uncle of the female victim said the couple lived together at the complex and had a 4-month-old baby. He says they had been together for over a year.
I saw both of them yesterday.
How did they seem? They seem okay?
Seem okay, happy, jolly, laughing, as usual, as always.
The sheriff's office said there were no other injuries. No word tonight on what led to the argument and to the shooting.
It's just very tragic. Obviously, our hearts go out to the family.
May 16th started like any other day, but Jacavia had no idea it would be her last. Picture her that morning, 20 years old, getting up to care for her 4-month-old daughter. Maybe she made coffee, maybe she changed diapers and warmed bottles, maybe she looked out the window at the Florida sunshine and thought about what she wanted to do with her day. Normal as usual. Everything was normal. But somewhere in that apartment, Tridarius Gray was watching her. And whatever he saw, whatever conversation they had, whatever argument was building, it was pushing him toward a decision that would destroy everything. We don't know exactly what triggered the argument that day. Was it money? Was it the baby? Was it something Jacavia said or didn't say? Did she talk to someone he didn't want her talking to? What we do know is that at some point, Jacavia reached her breaking point. At 3:47 p.m., she pulled out her phone and typed 3 words that would seal her fate. I am single. Remember those 3 words from the beginning? Here's the moment they became a target on her back. Think about what it takes for someone to make that declaration. You don't just wake up one day and decide to publicly end your relationship on social media. That's not an impulse decision. That's someone who has had enough. Someone who has been pushed past their limit. Someone who is ready to face whatever consequences that comes with claiming their freedom. For most of us, changing our relationship status means dealing with awkward questions from relatives and maybe some drama from our ex. For Jacavia, it meant signing her own death warrant. Because Tridarius Gray saw that post. And in his mind, Jacavia didn't have the right to be single. She didn't have the right to leave him. She didn't have the right to make decisions about her own life. In his mind, she belonged to him. The hours between 3:47 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. are a mystery. What was said? What threats were made? Did Jacavia try to leave? Did she try to take the baby with her? Did she call anyone for help? What we know is that by evening, the neighbors were hearing raised voices. Arguments. The kind of shouting that makes you turn up your TV and pretend you don't hear it. A normal Tuesday. Just a normal Tuesday. But normal Tuesdays don't usually end with body bags. At 7:30 p.m., the neighbors heard what they thought were fireworks, not knowing they were wrong. Think about every argument you've ever had that felt life or death. Now realize that for some people, it literally is. Share this video if you believe every fight should end with words, not weapons. Because Jacavia never got the chance to walk away. Was Jacavia's Facebook post a desperate plea for help? Or was it the final act of someone who knew she was about to die? And if she knew, why didn't she run? What would you have done? Tell me what you think in the comments. What I'm about to tell you happened in less than 4 minutes. 4 minutes that orphaned a baby and destroyed 2 families forever. At 7:30 p.m., the first 911 call came in from neighbors reporting gunshots at the Stoddart Place apartments. Multiple shots. Then silence. Deputies from the Escambia County Sheriff's Office were dispatched immediately. As they raced through the streets of Pensacola, they had no idea what they were about to walk into. Would it be a domestic dispute, a robbery gone wrong, or a gang violence? When they arrived, they found something much worse than any of them had prepared for. Inside apartment 2B, they found Jacavia Rochelle Simmons lying motionless, struck by multiple gunshots. 20 years old, a mother, a daughter, a friend who played UNO when no one else would. Beside her, Tridarius Gray, the gun still in his hand. The coward's way out was taking her life and then his own, while leaving everyone else to clean up the carnage. 4 minutes. A commercial break is longer than 4 minutes. How many lives can be destroyed in 4 minutes? How many futures can die in 4 minutes? The investigators would later piece together what happened in those final moments. The argument that had been building all day. It was all about Jacavia's refusal to take down the Facebook post she made lately. And Tridarius's rage at losing control of the woman he believed he owned. Multiple gunshots. Each one a choice. Each one a moment when he could have stopped. Each one a moment when he chose murder over letting her go. The weapon was likely one he had access to regularly. This wasn't a crime of passion where he grabbed whatever was nearby. This was calculated. This was planned. This was a man who had probably thought about this scenario before. But here's what haunts me most about those 4 minutes. They could have been prevented. The 2021 aggravated battery arrest should have been a warning. The controlling behavior should have been recognized. The escalation should have been anticipated. Instead, a 4-month-old baby girl was in that apartment when her father murdered her mother and then killed himself. Physically unharmed, but orphaned in an instant. Emergency responders found her in her crib, crying but alive. She had no way of understanding that both of her parents were dead on the floor just feet away from her. She had no way of knowing that her entire world had just collapsed in 4 minutes. It took longer for you to brush your teeth this morning than it took for this entire tragedy to unfold. Kindly hit that subscribe button if you think 4 minutes shouldn't be enough time to destroy everything. Because for some families, 4 minutes is all they get. If Gray had survived and stood trial, would you want him to face the death penalty for this? Or is the real tragedy that he took the easy way out and left everyone else to live with the consequences? While her parents lay dying, a 4-month-old baby waited in her crib, not understanding that she had just become an orphan. When the deputies secured the scene, their first priority was finding and protecting Jacavia's daughter. They found her exactly where you'd expect a 4-month-old to be, in her crib, probably crying from all the noise, probably hungry, probably needing a diaper change. Just normal baby needs in the middle of an abnormal nightmare. The baby was immediately taken into protective custody. Social services was called. Emergency placement was arranged. Within hours, she went from being a little girl with 2 parents to being a ward of the state. But here's what keeps me awake at night thinking about this child. She was there. She was in that apartment when it happened. Even at 4 months old, even if she can't form conscious memories of that day, her developing brain was recording every sound, every vibration, and every moment of that trauma. An orphan at 4 months old. She'll never remember her mother's voice, but she'll live forever with the story of how she lost it. What do you tell a child like that when she gets older? How do you explain that daddy killed mommy and then killed himself? How do you help her understand that love isn't supposed to end in murder? And here's the question that terrifies me. Will she repeat the pattern? Because sometimes, children who grow up in homes with domestic violence are statistically more likely to either become victims or perpetrators themselves. It's called the cycle of violence, and it's one of the most heartbreaking aspects of cases like this. This little girl will grow up knowing that violence was the language her parents spoke when they couldn't communicate any other way. She'll grow up knowing that when daddy got angry, people died. The community rallied around her, of course. People donated money, offered to help with adoption, while others sent prayers and wishes. But money and prayers can't undo the fundamental trauma of losing both parents to violence before you can even walk. She'll Google her parents' names someday. She'll find news articles about the murder-suicide. She'll read about her mother's friends, remembering her kindness. She'll see the mugshot from her father's previous arrest, and she'll have to decide who she wants to be, in spite of where she came from. But this baby girl isn't the only victim who survived that day. There's Jacavia's family, who have to live with the questions and the guilt and the what-ifs. There's the friends who still post memories of her on social media years later. There's the first responders who had to walk into that apartment and see what human beings are capable of doing to each other. There's the neighbors who heard the gunshots and will always wonder if they should have called sooner, done something different, or been more involved. That little girl is growing up right now, and one day she'll Google her parents' names and find this story. Like this video, if you believe she deserves to find a world that learned something from her mother's death. Because right now, she's all we have left of Jacavia. Should that baby ever be told the truth about how her parents died? Or is there mercy in letting her believe a lie? What would cause less damage, the truth or lifelong deception? Give me your answers in the comments. They say when you throw a stone in water, the ripples go on forever. Jacavia's death created ripples that are still spreading today. Her uncle spoke to reporters in the days following the murder, and his words captured what everyone was feeling. "I can't understand how this happened. It looked like a normal relationship." Normal? That word keeps coming up in this story. Normal relationship, normal Tuesday, normal argument. But here's what I've learned from studying cases like this. Normal is often a mask that abusers wear in public. Behind closed doors, normal can hide a level of control and violence that would shock the people who think they know the couple. Jacavia's friends are still posting memories of her on social media. Years later, they're still grieving. They're still trying to make sense of how someone so full of life could be gone so suddenly. Jeriana, the friend who remembered playing Uno with Jacavia, posted again just recently. "She's not here anymore, so I have no one." That's the reality of losing someone to violence. It doesn't just take away the victim. It takes away pieces of everyone who loved them. The community held vigils. They organized fundraisers for the baby. They started conversations about domestic violence awareness. All good things, all necessary things. But here's what really haunts me. How many other Jacavias are living in our communities right now? According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 4 women will experience severe intimate partner violence in their lifetime. That's not a statistic in some faraway place. That's your neighbors, your coworkers, or even your family members. The stone keeps sinking, but the ripples never stop. How many people does one murder touch? How many lives does one death change forever? I think about Jacavia's story spreading beyond Pensacola. People in Atlanta reading about it and thinking about the women in their own lives. People in Mississippi seeing her picture and wondering if they know someone who needs help. Because that's the thing about stories like this. They force us to look around and ask uncomfortable questions. They force us to admit that domestic violence isn't something that happens to other people in other places. It happens in nice neighborhoods. It happens in families that look perfect from the outside. It happens to women who seem strong and independent and capable of protecting themselves. Just like the way it happened to Jacavia. But here's the question that keeps me awake at night about this case. Every person who knew Jacavia is now carrying her story for the rest of their lives. Comment below if you've ever lost someone to violence, because healing happens when we stop suffering in silence. If you had been Jacavia's friend and noticed the warning signs, would you have interfered? Or would you have respected her choice to stay with him? How many of us are enablers disguised as friends? Every true crime story leaves us with questions. But this one leaves us with questions that could save lives. Why didn't she leave sooner? That's always the first question people ask, and it's the wrong question. The right question is, why did he think he had the right to kill her for leaving? But let me answer the wrong question anyway, because understanding it might help us ask better questions in the future. Leaving an abusive relationship isn't like quitting a job you don't like. It's not like moving to a new city or ending a friendship that ran its course. When you're being abused, leaving can literally get you killed. Statistics show that the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they try to leave. That's when abusers escalate. That's when they realize they're losing control. That's when they decide that if they can't have you, nobody can. Maybe Jacavia had tried to leave before. Maybe that Facebook post wasn't her first attempt at independence. Maybe she had been planning and plotting and hoping for months before she finally found the courage to declare herself single. We'll never know, because the person who could answer those questions killed her and then took the coward's way out. Did she try to get help? Did she call a domestic violence hotline? Did she reach out to family or friends? Did she have a safety plan? Again, we'll never know. But what we do know is that whatever help she sought, whatever plans she made, it wasn't enough to save her life. Here's what we also know. There are women right now, today, in your community, making the same calculations Jacavia made. Wondering if today is the day they find the courage to leave. Wondering if they can make it out alive. The social media connection in this case is particularly disturbing because it represents how domestic violence has evolved in the digital age. Now abusers can monitor their victims 24/7. They can track their location, read their messages, see who they're talking to, and know when they're trying to leave. That Facebook post wasn't just Jacavia declaring her independence. It was her doing it publicly, in a way that her abuser would immediately see. Was that brave or naive? Was it a cry for help or a death wish? Questions without answers. Answers that came too late. Too late for Jacavia, too late for her daughter, but maybe not too late for the next one. If Jacavia could speak to us now, what would she want us to learn from her story? I think she'd want us to recognize the signs. I think she'd want us to believe women when they tell us they're afraid. I think she'd want us to understand that love doesn't look like control, and control doesn't look like protection. Again, I think she'd want us to know that 3 words on Facebook shouldn't be a death sentence. But mostly, I think she'd want her daughter to grow up in a world where stories like hers don't happen anymore. I want you to do something right now that might feel uncomfortable. Think of 3 women in your life. Really think about them. Can you honestly say you know they're completely safe? Share this video if you believe every woman deserves to be more than a true crime story. Because Jacavia's death only matters if it prevents the next one. Here's what I really want to know. If we can solve murders after people are dead, why can't we prevent them while people are still alive? What does it say about us that we're better at investigating tragedy than preventing it? Tell me in the comments, are we part of the problem or part of the solution? Until next time, when we bring these crucial narratives to light, you should stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and see you on our next story.